Welcome to today's knot, the clove hitch. And if you'll remember from the terminology section, a hitch is when you tie a rope to something else. This is the first of several hitches we'll look at in the course, but the clove hitch is definitely a very useful knot. We'll see it come back in more complex knots in the future, so it's one that you want to definitely get under your belt. You'll notice here I have it tied around a large dowel, because this is commonly how you might find a clove hitch used to tie something off. And let's take a look at how we do this knot in this hitch. So this is a really classic appearance for the clove hitch. Overall, just by looking at it, it forms an X pattern because you have both the tail end and the standing end running parallel to each other. Then you have this loop going over the top, forming a general X pattern. So we're going to look at this knot two different ways today. We're going to learn how to tie it over a post like this, but we're also going to learn to tie it just in the air, not over anything. And we're going to do that one first, but I wanted to show you how the knot looks so you can kind of get an idea in your mind's eye as we start to create this hitch. Okay, let's take a look at how to tie the clove hitch. I'm not doing it over a pole, just in the air, free form, and then we'll look at doing it over the pole. So I just have about a 4-foot section of rope in my hand. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just make the left end my tail end for now, just so I don't have too much on both sides. But you really could do this in any part of the rope. So let's make a loop. I'm going to start this loop by taking my left thumb down or away from me and my right thumb up in that direction to form my loop and pinch it off. Now, if you want to follow along with me, it's really important that you make your loop the same way. I finished my loop with the tail end on top of the loop. Now I'm going to make a loop right next to this first loop, and I'm going to turn my right thumb exactly the same way that I used the first time I created the first loop. So I'll do that one again. Watch, my right thumb goes that direction, away from me. There's my loop. Pinch it. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm not going to do too much with my left hand because I'm holding the loop. I'm going to make my right hand do most of the turning, but the concept is the same. My right thumb is going to rotate that way, and now I've got two loops pretty much the same size right next to each other. And what's really important that you notice is that by doing the twist the same way, you notice that the tail end is on top of the loop on that side, but the standing end is on the bottom of the loop on this side. That's very important for tying this knot. What we don't want to see, and I'm just going to reverse the direction of this loop to show you, you notice that this tail end goes on top of the loop and the standing end goes on top of the loop. That's what we don't want. So I'm just going to put this back the way it was correctly. So we have the tail on top of the loop on this side, and we have the standing end on the bottom of the loop on that side. Now take a loop in each hand and pinch it off with your thumb and index finger. What we're going to do is to lay these two loops over top of each other. And we're going to do it by rolling them in towards each other. But there's a catch. We have two choices. We can either I could either take my right loop and roll it under the left or over the left. So how do I know which way to go? We want to end up with a secure loop, or two loops, and a secure knot when we're done. So I'm going to turn the rope in this way so you can look straight down and see that if I take the two loops like this, the tail end and my standing end are sandwiched between the two loops. That's ultimately what we want. So if you're following along and you've got your left loop looking like mine does, where the tail is on top and standing end is on the bottom on the right one, you're going to take the right one and turn it over top of the left. Okay? So I'm just taking my right hand, moving it towards the left, and now I have my two loops overlapping, but more importantly, the tail and the standing end are right sandwiched between those two loops. Now I can pinch that with one hand, and I have a very firm loop that's not going to come apart. Now if I had a post right here, I could set this down right over top of it, and I'll do that in a minute. But to show you the wrong way, what were to happen if I were to take that right loop and go under the left rather than over it? So let's try that. Now if I go under it, you notice there's nothing restraining that side. In fact, let's look at this head on. It's very difficult to hold together, and that's exactly the point. So this loop here on the side now just wants to fall apart, and the whole knot just wants to fall apart. So let's go through that a little bit faster. Make my loop, pinch it, make a second loop, turning my right hand in the same direction. There are my two loops. Difference in where the tail and standing ends are. Roll it together, the right one on top. But remember, if you're not doing it exactly like I am, the real question to ask is, how do I have to roll these together so that that tail and standing end are right sandwiched between the two loops? And finish. And there is my clove hitch. Okay, now that I have my clove hitch in one hand, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to take a little piece of plastic pipe and just show you how this would just slip right over down over the top. To dress this knot, I'm just going to pull the left and the right hand. And there is my clove hitch. I'm going to turn it on its side so you can see that we have that classic X pattern that we talked about and that we saw in the first part of the video. And so that's a useful way to do this if you have a post like this and you want to tie it and just set the knot right over top. Just set it right down on it, cinch it up, pull the tail and standing end, and you are done. Now that we've seen that, let's take a look at how to tie this when we don't have something we want to just set that knot right over. Maybe we have a post running all the way along, like a fence post, and we don't have access to either end, and we have to tie it around something. So I'm going to take the tail end of my rope and I'm going to drape it over the pole. Now in your case, if you don't have a pole like this handy, you could use the back of a chair if it's got something like this in it, or even the leg of a chair. Just any kind of rung that hopefully is positioned horizontally like this in front of you rather than vertically, although you could practice with that too, but it's going to be a lot easier to visualize this if you're just getting started. So I'm going to drape it over. I'm going to loop it around. Now I've got the tail end of the rope in my left hand, and it's on the left hand side, just like this. And from here, I'm going to take that tail and loop it over by crossing over the standing end to the other side. So simple loop around, cross over. From here, just pull that side down towards you. Now remember what this knot looked like. We have part of our X, but the finishing part is next to the standing end. We need to have the tail end coming up this way. So all I'm going to do is take the tail I'm going to lift up on this loop just a little bit so I can tuck this under. And there is my clove hitch. Now, to dress this knot, we want to take those 2 loops on the bottom and cinch them in a little bit. And that's about all there really is to making everything look nice and pretty on this knot. Then I'm going to take the tail and the standing end and pull. And there is my finished clove hitch. So let's take a look at that one more time. And I want to do it from a different direction this time. So I'm going to loop it around. I'm going to use my right hand, loop it around, pull through. Now I just have a loop in that rope. I'm going to take the tail and I'm just going to cross over to the other side. Okay, so I just put a cross in that rope so you can see we have the start of our X. Take that side down through, pull it towards me. And now I just need to complete it by getting that X pattern by taking the tail, going up underneath that loop, pulling, put a little bit of tension, and dress it, and then put some tension on it. And there is my finished clove hitch. It's a pretty sturdy knot. There are some circumstances under which it will come apart, but if you're just using it for something like this, it is pretty stable. Of course, as anything, it depends on the type of rope that you're using. It's a very slippery rope. It also depends on the type of tension you have on this. If you take this knot and you pull it this way so that the standing end rides up towards it, you can see that I can actually get this knot to come apart relatively easily, even though I had a lot of tension on it. Typically, in the case of, let's say, tying off a horse to a hitching post, you wouldn't have this kind of motion. So it's not something really to worry about. But if you wanted, there are some ways to actually tie this off to make it a little more secure, but we're not going to talk about that in this lesson. We'll talk about that type of knot coming up in future parts of the course. So practice the clove hitch. Let's look at it one more time. Normal speed, over, cross, through, pull, dress it, and snug it up. So practice that, get good at it, get comfortable with it, and when you're ready, I'll see you in the next lesson.